Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1. You will hear two people discussing an extramural course. Fill in the information you hear on the application form below.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Now, here is the conversation.
Hi, Jenny. What are you doing down here?
Oh, hello, Steve. Well, I'm trying to fill in this form, but I'm having a bit of a struggle as I sprained my wrist playing tennis yesterday.
Don't worry, I'll do it for you. Let's have your pen. Right, fire away.
Let's see. I want to do the drama and theatre studies. I'd like to get the certificate. The course number is 60201. No, sorry, 202. It seems to be on Thursday at 7:30.
Yes, well, we don't have to put all that down. Now, I suppose we can call you Miss?
Don't be funny, and spell my name right.
Well, if you'll have a name like Jenny McPherson, let's see, it's M-A-C.
No, big M, small c, no A.
Right, M-C-P-H-E-R-S-O-N.
Yes, okay, and don't forget it's a capital P, McPherson.
Now, what's your address?
Well, I've just moved, so it's 6 Westway Avenue, Longford.
Hang on, don't go so fast. 6 Westway Avenue where?
Longford. What's next?
Your phone number, daytime and evening.
Well, I've only got one, as we can't have calls at school in the daytime, so put down the evening one. 605-4829.
4829, OK. And you're a teacher. How old are you? 29?
Wish I were. No, 32.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Do they want my date of birth?
No, don't seem to. Just age. How about educational qualifications?
Well, I've got a degree in English literature and a diploma in media studies.
Media studies, right. Now, have you ever done any of these extramural courses before?
No, don't think so. Although I did do something on psychodrama once. But no, it wasn't extramural, was it?
That seems to be it, except for the fee.
Yes, well, that's the same for all the central courses. I think £25. I suppose I have to include it with this form.
Looks like it. Do you want me to write the cheque out for you? But you'll have to sign it.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a conversation between two flatmates, Craig and Don, who are looking for a third person to share their flat.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hi, Craig. Been home long?
Yeah, quite a time.
Did anyone phone about renting the spare room?
Yeah, we've had 3 phone calls about it.
Really?
Yeah. Do you want to hear about them?
Sure.
Right. The first one was called Phil Parrott.
Uh-huh.
He's a teacher. He's just qualified and he teaches sports.
OK.
Actually, I'm not sure about him. He certainly sounded energetic, but he asked lots of questions about whether we smoked and what sort of food we cooked.
Yeah. I mean, we don't exactly live on pizza and chips and takeaways. Well, not quite, but...
But he might be a bit too health-conscious to really fit in with the sort of life we lead. Yeah. And he asked a lot of questions about the room. He said he needs a big room because he's got lots of sports equipment.
Well, that's OK. The room's quite big, but I'm not so sure about him. What about the second one?
He was called David Spencer.
Spender?
No, Spencer. C-E-R. He works at Cooper Long. You know, the big company on Broad Street. He said he was a lawyer.
Oh. I'd have thought in that case he'd be earning enough to rent his own place. I wonder why he wants to share a flat.
Well, he didn't say. He's quite a bit older than us. He did say he's just moved down here from the north of England. He seemed very quiet, actually. Maybe he wants to meet some new people. I got the impression he was a hard-working kind of person who doesn't go out all that much.
Right.
But he sounded OK. Oh, one thing, though. He said he wouldn't be staying in the flat at the weekends, so he wants to pay reduced costs for gas and electricity, because he's only here 5 days out of 7.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. What do you think?
Well, I suppose it's fair, but it all sounds a bit complicated.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Anyway, there was a third person, Leo Norris.
Yes?
He's an engineer.
Oh, yeah?
And he's about our age.
Right. What did he sound like?
Well, actually, he was really funny. I couldn't stop laughing when I was talking to him. He said he was very lazy and never got up until noon at weekends, and I said that wouldn't be a problem here.
No, certainly not.
But actually, I suspect he was joking when he said he was lazy. I think he lives life as it comes. He's certainly not competitive or stressed, but he likes cycling and things like that. He sounds like an outdoor type. Anyway, I thought he sounded as if he'd fit in. He wanted to check if there was somewhere safe for his bicycle. That's not a problem.
No, he can leave it in the garage with my car. So did you get his contact details?
Yes, he left his mobile number. It's 077 687 2433.
And does he want to move in straight away?
Well, he's paid his rent in his present place up to the 31st of September, but he said that if possible he'd like to move in a bit before then. He said the 28th of September.
And he was okay about the rent?
Yeah, he said it was fine.
Right. So shall we give him a ring and see if he wants to come round and...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear an interview with Dr. Simons.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Well, as I said, there were 3 areas of interest, so perhaps we should take each in turn.
Fine. Let's take the medical and physical evidence first.
Well, first of all, life expectancy. Although some very old individuals were encountered, the Ramesses is a case in point. He was probably over 90. It seemed the average Egyptian died rather young, from about 30 to 35 years old, on the whole. Although the nobility, as might be expected, tended to live longer. Some of them have been found to be 50 or 60 years old. Well, naturally, the older they got, the more medical problems were encountered. But some modern disorders have so far not been found. There is no evidence yet of any malignant tumours, for example, although the fact that most people studied were comparatively young could account for this. Another modern problem, dental decay, was also absent, probably due to the plain diet and absence of sugar. There was another problem with teeth caused by this diet. The stones on which their flour was ground caused a lot of grit to get into the bread, and this eroded the teeth, so much that many older people must have suffered greatly and could have been confined to a liquid diet. An abscess on the jaw caused by this kind of erosion may in fact have contributed to the death of Ramesses II. Analysis of the internal organs of several mummies has revealed that intestinal parasites were common, even among the upper classes. Evidence of a generally low standard of public hygiene and another widespread disorder was a form of anemia. Naturally, the ancient Egyptians didn't smoke, but lesions on the lung were widespread. These, however, are the sort that we associate today with workers in mines and quarries, and must be due, in the case of Egyptians, to living in sandy desert conditions. Actually, on the smoking issue, there was a temporary sensation when traces of what appeared to be tobacco were found in Ramesses' sarcophagus, but botanists later confirmed that it was not in fact tobacco itself, but a related plant which is native to Egypt. In the meantime, cynics were commenting that it probably had come from the cigarette of some careless Egyptologist or museum attendant of the past.
Ha ha! And what about their physical appearance?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Well, what would you expect from seeing Egyptian art? They were light and slight in build. The average height for both men and women was about 1.60 meters, and studies of the skeletons from which the covering of flesh can be extrapolated suggest that they weighed much less in relation to their height than most modern people. from about 10 to 15 kilograms, less than someone of a similar height today is the estimate.
And what about mummification?
Well, the first thing to be said is that it wasn't always done in the same way, and it was by no means infallible, as many people tend to think. Many bodies, including that of the famous King Tutankhamun, were also entirely destroyed by overuse of one or another of the substances generally employed. The basic procedure was much the same, however. Most of the internal organs, including the brain, were removed and preserved separately in a jar. The brain was got out through the nose using a sort of hook.
Oh dear.
Yes, it used to be thought that the heart was always removed too, but in the case of Ramesses it was found in place. The body was then immersed in a substance called natron. That's a form of sodium carbonate, which occurred naturally in Egypt, for 40 to 70 days. It was then washed, made up and wrapped in linen bandages and placed in its coffin or sarcophagus. Then it was soaked in oils, resins and perfumes to help preserve it further.
You said the body was made up. Do you mean its face was painted?
Yes. Ramesses was not only made up, they had to restructure his nose, which was damaged when they took out his brain. The investigators found that it had been stuffed with small animal bones and peppercorns of all things. His hair had been dyed too.
You said that Ramesses had suffered other adventures after his death?
Ah, well, yes. Poor chap. Well, for a start, he was found in a much later tomb than his real date. Along with a lot of other pharaohs, it looks very much as if the priests of later times had moved and reburied him to save him from tomb robbers. His body was transported, along with the other pharaohs found in the same tomb, to the Cairo Museum. That was in 1871, and it was put on display. Well, naturally, removed from the dry desert atmosphere, his body started to deteriorate, and by the 1970s was in very poor state. That was part of the reason why the Egyptian authorities gave their consent for its temporary removal to Paris for study. Yet another upheaval. The French experts aimed not only to carry out an investigation, but were also able to apply the latest techniques of restoration and conservation, so that at the end of the study, Ramesses was specially treated and then rewrapped in new bandages. Well, they weren't exactly new, since they were of ancient Egyptian date, given a new sarcophagus and carefully transported back to Cairo, where he is now kept in a controlled environment, which should slow down the deterioration process.
So, as I said at the beginning, not only was science served, but a proper respect was paid to the remains in the end.
Exactly.
The end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear someone talking about art. Look at questions 31 to 40.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first in this year's series of public lectures offered by the Art Gallery. As Chief Curator of the Gallery, I was given the honour of presenting the first lecture, and let me tell you, I had a difficult time deciding what to talk about tonight. Being the curator, I naturally know just about everything that's in this gallery, but I wanted to choose an artist who has a wide appeal. That seems only fair, yes? But I didn't want to talk about someone so well known that anything I said would be familiar. I wanted someone modern. My personal preference is for modern art. But again, I wanted to choose someone who had the potential to appeal to all art lovers, whether they're attracted to traditional forms, Impressionism, Surrealism, or what have you. So, having spent the last 5 years as a visiting professor in Barcelona, it's not surprising that I finally chose to talk about one of the greatest Catalan artists, one whose work is likely to be familiar to many of you, Joan Miró. Look at this. And this. And this. Ring any bells? Miró's most famous and most widely reproduced works tend to be like this. Bright primary colours with lots of asymmetrical forms. He painted on large canvases, larger than himself quite often, and his paintings depicted birds, trees, flowers, and other features of the natural world. But Miró produced a great variety of work, and it's about some of his lesser-known paintings that I would like to speak this evening. Miró was born in Barcelona in 1893, the son of a goldsmith. He began to show talent very early, and in 1926 went to Paris, where he was drawn to the Surrealists of Montparnasse. He did not define himself as a Surrealist, however. He preferred to stay free to experiment with other artistic styles as he wished. Miró had an intense dislike of much of the painting and many of the painters he knew. He wished to do something totally different, to express his contempt for bourgeois art. And yet, ironically, Miró's success has made his works much in demand among art collectors of the world. But we can't really talk about the artist without looking at his art. And that's what I'd like to do now. To take a look at just a few of Miró's works and think about what it is that makes them special. Special to me, and to a great number of people who flock every day to the Miró Foundation in Barcelona. Let's start with this. One of Miró's best-known and brightest works, Woman and Bird. A sculpture created in 1982. It is on display in a park in Barcelona, often known as the Joan Miró Park. A huge sculpture, towering up into the sky. It reflects Miró's eternal interest in these themes, as well as his more technical interest in materials. This sculpture is covered in mosaic, which gives it a naive and cheerful appearance. It is interesting that this sculpture was completed in 1982, just a year before Miró's death. I think it shows that, towards the end, he was feeling as playful as a young man, and I think he wanted to share this playfulness in a park on such a big, very public scale. And now, another representation of a woman, this time just called Woman. This was painted in 1976, a late work for Miró, and is a work we often see reproduced or on sale as postcards or posters in gallery shops around the world. So why is it so popular? I think the use of colour has something to do with it. People respond to these rounded shapes filled with primary colours, especially on a large canvas like this. Also, the fact that, while it is rather surreal, it is still possible to recognise the form of a woman and to see it as a sympathetic representation. It's a bold, bright painting, and I think that it awakens a reaction in many of us. And finally, something quite different, though still a woman. A harsh, even violent work that was completed in 1939, at a time when Miró was greatly influenced by events of the Civil War in Spain. It's titled Seated Woman 2, but it can be hard to find the woman here, as she's been transformed into a rather horrendous creature. So is that how Miró viewed women? As grotesque? Not at all. This picture can also be seen as strong, with a huge base and solid shoulders to support those who depend on her. In this painting, her arms and neck seem to grow as vegetation out of her shoulders, representing woman as a fertile ground, perhaps. We also see here the fish and birds, the moon and stars, so typical of Miraut's work, making her a creature of nature and of the heavens as well. And that's all we have time for this evening, I'm afraid. I hope that you've enjoyed this brief look at Miraut's work and that you will enjoy the other lectures that follow this one. Thank you and good night.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.